On March 28 this year, Myanmar shakes badly as a 7.7 earthquake rips the ground apart. Bridges snap like toys. Skyscrapers in Bangkok tremble, spilling water onto packed streets. But this is just the fresh chapter in Earth's long, brutal story. Back in 1556, the ground in China cracked open suddenly, burying thousands alive. In 1811, the magnificent Mississippi River did the unthinkable. It flowed backward. In 1700, Japan was slammed by big waves, yet nobody there felt any shaking. These aren't coincidences. They're signals. The ground beneath your feet is a lie. It shifts, it splits, and it erases. Today, we'll see 15 most brutal natural events that shocked the world. Moments when whole cities vanished and turned into mass graveyards. Number 15. The 1906 San Francisco earthquake. It was early morning on April 18, 1906, when San Franciscans woke to a terrifying jolt. A 7.9 magnitude earthquake tore along the San Andreas Fault, toppling buildings and burying families beneath debris. But the worst was still to come. Broken gas lines triggered fires across the city. Water mains had ruptured too, leaving no way to fight the flames. The fire raged for 3 straight days, reducing homes, businesses, and iconic landmarks to nothing but ashes. Firefighters resorted to blowing up buildings to stop the blaze, but it didn't help. Over 3,000 people died, though many believe the number was far higher. Officials suppressed the full death toll to avoid panic. Photographs from the Library of Congress showed a city swallowed by smoke. Author Jack London, who witnessed the destruction, described a silent city of ghosts. San Francisco was rebuilt more perfectly, but the trauma of fire and earth arriving together has never left. Number 14. The 1556 Shanxi earthquake. The ground didn't shake long, but what it left behind was unthinkable. January 23, 1556, in Shanxi province, people awoke to violent shaking that lasted mere moments. Entire villages vanished. At the time, many families lived in caves carved into cliffs, yaodongs, shelters that had stood for centuries. But that day, they collapsed inward, burying entire bloodlines alive. Historical records from the Ming Dynasty describe towns left with no buildings standing, rivers overflowing, and farmland drowned. Over 830,000 people were killed, making it the deadliest earthquake in human history. Survivors wrote about dogs barking non-stop before the quake and horses refusing food. Even today, archaeologists find skeletons entombed deep in compacted soil from that morning. The devastation was so widespread that it forever changed Chinese architecture, shifting from cave homes to wooden structures. But despite the reforms, the memory of that day remains buried not just under the earth, but deep within China's cultural memory. Number 13. The 2011 Japan earthquake. On March 11th of 2011, a disaster struck Japan that felt like a nightmare come to life. The earth trembled with a 9.0 magnitude quake, the strongest the country had ever recorded. It lasted 6 endless minutes. Then the sea came back with fury. Waves as tall as buildings flooded towns like Sendai and Minamisoma, wiping them off the map. More than 18,000 people died, many swept out to sea. But it didn't stop there. At Fukushima, backup systems failed. Nuclear reactors melted down, leaking radiation. Entire towns became uninhabitable overnight, forcing thousands to leave everything behind. Today, places near Fukushima remain ghost cities, with only wildlife walking the streets. Each year, survivors release paper lanterns into the ocean to remember the dead. It quietly mirrors the 1896 Meiji Sanriku tsunami, which also took thousands of lives. But this time, the world watched in real time. Japan was changed forever by 6 minutes of shaking. Number 12. The 1964 Alaska earthquake. People were preparing for Easter weekend when the shaking hit at 5:36 p.m. on March 27, 1964. A violent 9.2 magnitude earthquake, North America's most powerful ever recorded, tore through Alaska for nearly 4 minutes. Roads twisted into waves. Entire neighborhoods sank into the sea. In places like Chenega, hardly anyone survived. Massive tsunamis followed, swallowing entire coastal towns. Fishing boats ended up deep inside forests. Buildings were ripped from their foundations. Scientists later found the quake shifted Earth's axis and shortened the day by a fraction of a second. Photographs from the U.S. Geological Survey showed ships stranded on cliffs, beaches pushed meters above sea level, and forests broken in half. Survivors described the ground as liquid. The disaster echoed Alaska's 1899 quake, but this one made it impossible to look away. Nature didn't just tremble, it redefined the entire region. And for those who lived through it, the land never truly stopped moving, even after the rumbling ended. Number 11. The 1976 Tangshan earthquake. Most of Tangshan was still asleep when the shaking began at 3:42 a.m. on July 28, 1976. Without any warning, a powerful 7.8 magnitude earthquake struck, flattening nearly the entire city in seconds. Homes collapsed like dust. Families were buried in their sleep. Official numbers claimed 255,000 deaths, but later accounts suggested more than 600,000 perished. China kept it quiet. Journalists were barred, and the outside world heard nothing for years. Stories finally emerged, parents digging with bare hands to reach their children, hospitals overflowing, and people wrapped in bandages lying in hallways. Some remembered dogs howling oddly the night before. Others spoke of thick black rain falling afterward. Tangshan was gone overnight. Nothing recognizable remained. It mirrored the deadly 1556 Shanxi quake, yet this modern tragedy was almost buried like the victims. Only recently has it been fully acknowledged. For those who survived, the silence that followed wasn't just eerie. It was the loudest thing they'd ever heard. Number 10. The 2025 Mandalay earthquake. It began quietly in Mandalay, Myanmar, but at exactly 11:43 a.m. on March 28th, everything changed. The earth suddenly roared as a violent 7.7 magnitude earthquake struck just 17 kilometers from the city, toppling buildings and bridges. Even the historic Ava Bridge, built by the British in 1934, collapsed into twisted metal. Far away, 500 kilometers across the border in Bangkok, skyscrapers shook hard. Rooftop pools overflowed, flooding packed streets and sparking chaos throughout the downtown core. A 30-story high-rise under construction buckled and fell, trapping 90 workers inside. 8 bodies were recovered before fire broke out in the rubble, halting rescue efforts. Myanmar's usually silent government shocked observers by publicly requesting aid. Roads to Mandalay were blocked by debris and landslides. In Taungoo, a 200-year-old mosque collapsed during Friday prayers, killing dozens. 2 days later, a strong 6.4 aftershock destroyed already weakened buildings. Historians quickly drew parallels to Myanmar's 1930 Bago quake, a tragedy mostly forgotten until this disaster forced it back into memory. Number 9. The 2010 Haiti earthquake. Well, everything felt normal in Port-au-Prince until the ground buckled at 4:53 p.m. on January 12, 2010. A 7.0 magnitude quake struck just outside the city, crumbling buildings like sandcastles. The National Palace, a symbol of Haitian pride, collapsed within seconds. Schools, hospitals, homes, all reduced to piles of concrete. Over 160,000 people died, but many more were never found. Families dug with bare hands, pulling out relatives while the injured screamed under the wreckage. Aid was slow. Clean water and medicine disappeared. Diseases spread fast in makeshift camps. Footage captured a man playing violin on top of rubble while smoke swirled around him. Survivors sat in shock beside broken homes, staring into silence. The quake echoed the forgotten 1842 Cap Haitian disaster, but this time, the world was watching. It wasn't just super destruction, it was collapse, grief, and survival, all at once. Number 8. The 1960 Chile earthquake. On May 22nd of 1960, people in Valdivia, Chile were enjoying an ordinary day until the ground began to shake harder than it ever had. The quake registered 9.5, the most powerful in recorded history. For 10 full minutes, the earth cracked open, swallowing towns. The sea first pulled back, then surged forward in a 25-meter-high wave, flattening coastal villages. Boats landed on rooftops. Wooden houses vanished. Nearby volcanoes erupted, darkening the skies with ash. Landslides blocked rivers, forming lakes that later burst and flooded low-lying towns. People spoke of cows stranded on rooftops, bells ringing without touch. Scientists later revealed the quake was so strong it shifted Earth's axis, making days slightly shorter. It echoed Chile's 1835 earthquake, so powerful Charles Darwin described it as the Earth breathing. But 1960 did more than echo. It redrew Chile's coastline, changed geography, and forced the world to acknowledge that even the Earth's rotation isn't safe from seismic wrath. Nature is scary. Number 7. The 1811 New Madrid earthquake. Just after midnight on December 16, 1811, settlers near New Madrid, Missouri, were jolted from sleep as the ground buckled beneath them. It wasn't a single quake, but a violent series of tremors, with at least 3 registering over magnitude 7.0. Cracks opened wide in the earth, sand geysers shot into the air. Witnesses said the Mississippi River did the impossible. It flowed backward for hours. Whirlpool currents sucked boats into the depths. Forests collapsed. Swamps swallowed homes. Tremors rang church bells as far away as Boston. New lakes formed. Reelfoot Lake in Tennessee emerged overnight from sinking land. Indigenous tribes had long warned of a restless force buried beneath the region. After that night, no one doubted them. Though it's not widely remembered, this sequence of quakes remains one of the most powerful ever to hit the continental U.S. Even today, small tremors still rumble through the area. Number 6. The 1970 Peru earthquake. On May 31, 1970, families in Peru's Ancash region were at home enjoying a quiet Sunday afternoon. Then the earth snapped. A 7.9 magnitude earthquake hit with force so violent it shook the Huascaran Mountains. High above, a massive chunk of glacier broke loose. It wasn't just an avalanche, it was a roar of ice and rock that surged down the mountainside, moving faster than anyone could run. The town of Yungay vanished within minutes. Buildings, buses, and over 7,000 lives were buried beneath a crushing wave of ice and debris. Only the tops of palm trees and part of a church were left visible. The scene echoed a deadly avalanche that struck the same mountain in 1962, but this one hit harder, lower, and faster. Today, visitors to Yungay see what remains: a preserved cemetery, scattered ruins, and a small memorial. Number 5. The 1931 China earthquake. It wasn't just the ground that gave way. On August 10, 1931, a devastating 8.0 magnitude earthquake struck Xinjiang, China. Mountains crumbled, rivers were blocked, entire regions were cut off. At first, villagers noticed riverbeds drying out, unaware that enormous natural dams had formed upstream. Weeks later, one of those barriers gave out, releasing a monstrous flood. Entire towns were washed away overnight. Over 10,000 people were killed instantly. Homes, crops, livestock, gone. Survivors described a strange, dark rain falling afterward, a muddy mist that clung to everything. The government said little. Foreign press coverage barely touched the disaster. Only much later did explorers and hikers in Xinjiang start finding rusted tools, children's shoes, and scattered house beams in the soil. It was compared to the 1887 Yellow River flood, but this event was quieter, buried in isolation. Yet it left scars all over the land. Number 4. The 1700 Cascadia earthquake. On January 26, 1700, along the Pacific Northwest, an invisible beast tore through the earth. A magnitude 9.0 megathrust quake struck the Cascadia subduction zone, dropping vast stretches of land by several feet. Whole coastal villages vanished under waves. But because the indigenous communities didn't record events in writing, the disaster almost slipped from history. Thousands of miles across the Pacific, though, Japanese records told a different story. A mysterious orphan tsunami struck their shores that same day, with no local quake to explain it. Centuries later, scientists connected both ends of the Pacific to reveal the truth. This was a quake stretching from California to British Columbia. Entire forests drowned in salt water. Ghost trees still stand, preserved in place where they died. Until those clues emerged, the 1700 quake was hidden in silence. It was the kind of disaster that didn't leave behind ruins. It left behind nothing at all. Number 3. The 1923 Tokyo earthquake. At lunchtime on September 1, 1923, fires were burning in kitchens across Tokyo. Then the earth convulsed. A brutal 7.9 magnitude quake hit, toppling buildings instantly. But worse followed. Gas lines ruptured. Open flames ignited. Fires broke out everywhere, leaping across alleys and streets. Fire tornadoes formed, whipping through neighborhoods and reducing everything to ash. Over 140,000 people died in just a few hours. Thousands tried to flee toward rivers, but bridges crumbled or were set ablaze. In Yokohama, the iconic Grand Hotel collapsed, burying its guests. Days later, with supplies scarce, starving survivors were forced to eat animals from the Tokyo Zoo. Photos showed miles of flattened ruins. Witnesses said the flames seemed alive, twisting, chasing people block by block. The quake brought back grim memories of Tokyo's 1855 Ansei quake, but 1923 remains Japan's worst urban disaster. Every year, Tokyo holds nationwide emergency drills. The fire is gone, but the memory of it still burns in silence. Number 2. The 1995 Kobe earthquake. At exactly 5:46 a.m. on January 17, 1995, Kobe jolted awake. A sudden 6.9 magnitude earthquake tore through the city, splitting highways and collapsing buildings within seconds. Elevated roads twisted and fell like paper. Entire neighborhoods lit up in flames. Many homes were made of wood, and the fires spread fast. Firefighters were helpless, with water mains snapped and no pressure to fight the blaze. Over 6,000 people died. Thousands more were left without homes. The port was silent. Cranes leaned into the sea, containers thrown like dice. One famous video shows a bridge bending in slow motion before collapsing, capturing the full terror of that moment. The disaster was quickly compared to Tokyo's 1923 Great Kanto quake, but Kobe was supposed to be modern, earthquake-ready. The quake proved otherwise. Kobe rebuilt, stronger and safer, but those who lived through it still remember the brutal moments. Number 1. The 2004 Boxing Day disaster. In the Indian Ocean, a 9.1 magnitude earthquake tore open a 1,200-kilometer fault line on December 26th. At first, no one noticed. Then the water pulled away from the beaches, leaving fish stranded on dry sand. Tourists on Thailand's shores took videos, unaware of what was coming. Moments later, towering waves crashed in, leveling homes and hotels. Banda Aceh was hit hardest. A 2,600-ton ship was thrown 3 kilometers inland, where it still sits today. In Sri Lanka, a passenger train carrying 1,500 people was engulfed and crushed by the sea. Only a few survived. The tsunami killed 230,000 people across 14 countries, leaving behind trash and grief. Roads were erased, cities turned to ruins. The event echoed the deadly waves created by the 1883 Krakatoa eruption, but the Boxing Day disaster hit faster, harder, and with a global impact. There were no sirens, just the sound of water rushing back to reclaim lives. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.